at the table. My mother told me I didn't belong, not in that room, not in this family. What she didn't know was, I was days away from standing on the stage of the biggest tech award in the world. And when they called my name with $1 million prize, she was in the front row. You'll want to hear how we got there. Claire Bennett had always loved birthdays, especially her father's. When she was a child, she'd spend days painting homemade cards, decorating the dining room with paper streamers, and baking his favorite lemon pound cake with too much sugar and too little structure. But now, at 38, she found out about his 60th birthday celebration not from an invitation, but from a photo someone else had posted online. A family portrait. Without her. The text from her mother came 2 days later, short and sharp like the clink of a fork against a glass. Claire, we thought it would be best to keep the party small. You know how tense things can get. It was just the atmosphere. Hope you understand. Claire reread the message 3 times. There was no malice in it. Just omission. The kind that cuts without needing to be cruel. She stared at the photo again. Her father, cheeks flushed from wine, smiling in a navy blazer. Her mother, impeccably dressed. Her brother Dean and his fiancée, Sophia, with matching champagne flutes in hand. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. Everyone but her. She used to sit next to her father at every family meal. He'd call her my girl with the galaxy brain ever since she fixed their Wi-Fi router at age 10. He used to whisper encouragements when her mother's expectations felt like lead in her chest. But over the years, things shifted. Her decision not to pursue law, to skip medical school, to launch a startup instead of settling into a real job, all carved silent distance between them. At first, it was subtle, missed calls, changed dinner plans. Then came the avoidance, the silence in family group chats. And now this, a celebration where she no longer existed. Claire stood in her small apartment's kitchen that night, the hum of the refrigerator louder than her thoughts. She set her phone down and walked to the bookshelf. Tucked in between 2 software engineering textbooks was a photo from her 18th birthday, her last one before leaving for college. Her father had his arm around her. They were laughing at something only the 2 of them understood. She sat down slowly at the table, across from the one chair she never moved, the one she always imagined her father would sit in when he visited. But he hadn't, not in years. She lit a candle. Not to celebrate, but to mark something. A ritual for what was lost. And then, quietly, she whispered to the empty chair. I was there. I was just never who you wanted me to be. Memories flickered through her mind like frames of an old film. Her father's proud smile the day she won the regional robotics competition, quickly overshadowed by her mother's remark that it was just a hobby. The night she launched her first app, only to have the family group chat flooded with photos of Dean's new stethoscope. She'd stopped trying to make them see. Until now, when their absence hit harder than ever. What hurt wasn't being excluded. It was the reason behind it, that her presence, her life, her choices were so outside the family's script that they simply erased her from it. Claire stood, walked to the fridge, and grabbed a container of leftover takeout. Birthday dinner, she mused. Pad thai and lemon seltzer. But, as she sat back down, something shifted. The pain was still there, but it had edges now. Definition. Clarity. She wasn't invisible. She was unwelcome because she was undeniable. Her mother's words weren't passive, they were protective. Of a fragile narrative, of a world where success looked only one way, and Claire didn't fit inside it. She wasn't their failure. She was their disruption. She ate quietly, letting that truth settle inside her like warmth on a cold floor. Across from her, the chair remained empty. But it no longer looked like rejection. It looked like space. A place for something new. She opened her laptop and typed a few lines of code, nothing important, just a test script, but it felt like a declaration. Her fingers moving over the keys was a familiar rhythm, one that said, I exist, I build, I belong. I belong. She looked up once more at the chair and smiled, not with bitterness, but with quiet resolve. You can have your parties, she thought. I'll build something bigger. And she would. Because sometimes, the seat they take away from you is the one that gives you the strength to build your own table. Claire used to believe that love came in the form of lists, grades, awards, school rankings, gold stars. It was the only language her family seemed to understand. Her father, a respected cardiologist, and her mother, a trial lawyer known for her ruthless efficiency, measured the world in outcomes. And in their world, Dean, their firstborn, their future doctor, was the perfect product. At home, Dean's trophies lined the mantel. Soccer medals, debate championships, letters of acceptance from Ivy League schools framed like fine art. At the center of it all, a family photo from the night he got into Stanford. Claire was in the corner of the picture, blurry and half-cut, like she hadn't been the focus of the shot. She remembered the day she won the national high school coding competition. 15 years old, the only girl in the top 10 finalists. She had taught herself Python from an outdated library book, stayed up night after night building an app that streamlined emergency alerts for small-town hospitals. She came home with the plaque in her backpack. No one asked where she'd been. At dinner that night, she placed the award gently on the table. Her mother glanced at it between bites of asparagus. "That's nice, honey. Is it for school?" Claire hesitated. "It's national. I won first place." Her father barely looked up. "That's good, but don't let it distract you. You're already behind in math." She excused herself early that night. Down to the basement, her sanctuary. An unfinished space that smelled of dust and old paint, but where she had found the one thing her family couldn't touch: silence. Her old laptop sat on a metal folding table, its keyboard worn from years of late-night projects. The single bulb overhead flickered, so she used the glow of the screen to light her work. It made her feel like she was writing spells into the dark. In a way, she was. There, surrounded by boxes labeled holiday decorations and Dean's old textbooks, Claire built things. Tiny software programs, websites, games that no one played. She was creating proof of her value in a language her family never bothered to learn. One night, during parent-teacher conferences in 10th grade, Claire's computer science teacher told her mother, "Claire is brilliant. I wouldn't be surprised if she started a company someday." Her mother smiled politely and turned the page on Claire's grade report. Why is her math grade a B? That was the night Claire stopped waiting to be understood. At school, she became quiet. Not shy, just careful. She learned that being invisible wasn't the worst thing. It was safer than disappointment. When teachers praised her, she'd nod and deflect. When classmates teased her for being robot girl, she'd laugh along, hiding the sting. But every night, she returned to her basement. That old laptop, that folding chair, the quiet hum of the fan was where she felt most like herself. No parents. No comparisons. Just logic and creativity and the unshakable belief that somewhere, someday, this skill would mean something. One evening, Dean stormed into the basement looking for an old biology textbook. He paused, staring at the lines of code on her screen. "What are you even doing down here?" "Building something," she said. He snorted. "Whatever. Mom says you should be applying to law internships, not wasting time on computer stuff." And just like that, he was gone. She didn't even flinch. Because Claire had learned the art of resilience. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. She wasn't the golden child. She wasn't the loudest voice at the dinner table, or the one who made her parents beam with pride. But she was learning to be something else. Unshakable. She turned back to her code. A new idea forming. A seed. She typed a note at the top of the file. For no one. And maybe one day, for everyone. The hum of the fan was the only applause she heard, but it was enough. In that quiet basement, she began to believe what her family never told her. That her value wasn't in their expectations, it was in her persistence. And so she built, not because they saw her, but because she had learned to see herself. Every keystroke was a rebellion, a whisper against the silence. And every project was a mirror in which she reminded herself, I matter. Even if no one claps, even if they never say my name. Over time, the silence no longer hurt, it became power. It meant she didn't need to be seen by them to be real. She wasn't chasing recognition anymore. She was chasing something deeper, belonging to herself. Claire enrolled in the university's computer science program against her mother's strong disapproval. Law, her mother insisted, was the honorable path, a career that earned prestige, respect, and predictable milestones. No one takes coders seriously unless they're already billionaires, her mother once said, brushing off Claire's scholarship acceptance like it was a phase. Claire didn't fight. She just left. In her second semester, she met Maya. Maya was the kind of friend who didn't need backstory. She saw Claire's talent and matched it with her own wild ambition. Together, they started sketching ideas in between classes. Late nights turned into weekend coding sprints. By their third year, they had a working prototype of a platform they called Next Lincoln AI System, designed to reduce communication errors between healthcare professionals. It had started as a class project. But when they tested it with a few local clinics and saw error rates drop, they knew they had something real. They worked out of dorm rooms, coffee shops, and sometimes Maya's aunt's garage. They lived on caffeine and ramen. But they were building something important, something that could save lives. Maya had a phrase she repeated every time they hit a wall. "We're not waiting for doors. We're building walls to hang our own windows." Claire held on to that quote like armor. Because while Maya's family cheered every funding milestone, Claire's didn't even know the company existed. Her mother still thought she was freelancing on blog sites. Her father asked about law school applications every holiday dinner. When they received their first investment offer, $25,000 from a small venture group, Claire didn't even tell her family. It felt easier that way. No expectations, no dismissive glances. But inside, something had changed. The basement girl had become a businesswoman. She was managing a team, pitching to investors, and fielding emails from hospitals across the state. They faced gender bias in nearly every pitch meeting. More than once, Claire was asked if Maya was the real founder. They brushed it off, but every doubt thrown at them became another brick in the wall they were building together. Some nights, Claire cried quietly in the apartment she shared with Maya. Not out of defeat, but release. Because even when no one else saw it, she saw it. The growth, the fight, the worth. Then came the call. A larger hospital system wanted a pilot program. Their tech had shown a 17% drop in miscommunication incidents in initial trials. Claire hung up and looked at Maya. They didn't scream or jump around. They just nodded, and Maya whispered, "Told you." That night, Claire didn't go home. She walked through the city, let the cold air hit her face. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a girl pretending to be someone. She was someone. She thought about the next holiday dinner. Her family would ask the usual questions. She might even answer politely. But in her chest, she carried something they could never take away. The knowledge that she had chosen her own path, and it was leading somewhere powerful. Months later, Nextlink secured a six-figure grant to expand their pilot. With each success, Claire's confidence solidified. Yet still, she chose silence with her family. There was something poetic about building a legacy right under their noses. One weekend, Maya convinced Claire to speak at a Women in Tech event. She shared the stage with CEOs and innovators, and, when it was her turn, Claire's hands shook. But when she spoke about her journey, the room fell quiet. Not because of nerves, but because the story was theirs too. Later that night, an attendee approached Claire and said, "You sound like someone who's always been sure of herself." Claire smiled, quietly. "Not always," she said. "But I learned how to sound like it until I believed it." In that moment, she understood something deeper. Strength wasn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it lived in silence. In the choosing. In the persistence. Claire hadn't needed her family's approval to build her path. She had needed only one thing: faith in her own voice. And now, that voice was shaping futures. She no longer felt the need to explain her choices. The proof was in the platform they'd built, the lives they were already impacting, and the doors that were finally opening, not because she had waited, but because she had created the key herself. As Nextlink began to attract serious interest, Claire made a decision. She would hide her full identity behind a veil of ambiguity. In every investment contract and legal filing, she signed only as C. Bennett. It wasn't Alette, was Armor. Their startup was still young, still fragile. And Claire had seen firsthand how quickly confidence in a woman's leadership could unravel once assumptions kicked in. So when the first call came from a hospital board in San Francisco asking to schedule a virtual pitch, she introduced herself simply as the platform's operations lead. Halfway through the call, a senior consultant interrupted her. "Can you please patch in Mr. Bennett as well? We'd like to speak with the actual founder." Claire blinked once, then calmly replied, "You're speaking with them." The man stammered, apologized, moved on. Afterward, Maya asked her why she didn't correct people sooner. "Because they're not ready," Claire said. "But we are." They made a pact to let the work speak first. Late one night, after filing grant paperwork and preparing for another demo day, Claire stood in the tiny apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her hoodie was wrinkled, her hair messy. Her laptop hummed on the counter behind her. She whispered to the mirror, "They don't need to know who I am for me to succeed." It wasn't resignation, it was power. They had just hit their first $1 million in committed funding. Every investor signed the paperwork without ever asking what C stood for. No one questioned the initials or the voice on the calls that clearly came from a woman. Perhaps they assumed she was an assistant or a liaison. That was fine, because Claire had stopped waiting to be validated. She was building her company in plain sight, her signature a quiet defiance against the world's tendency to diminish. When they onboarded their first hospital system, Claire personally trained the physicians on how to integrate Nextlink into their communication protocols. She showed up in slacks and cardigans, deliberately non-flashy, and let the technology do the talking. After one training session, a senior nurse pulled her aside. "You're the brains behind this, aren't you?" Claire smiled. "I'm part of the team that built it." At home, her mother still asked when she'd consider law school again. "She can't blog forever," she once told Claire's father over dinner. Claire had overheard. She didn't correct them. Not yet. In those quiet moments filing taxes under a corporate entity she helped incorporate, hiring their fifth engineer, sending payroll, Claire felt like the CEO the world refused to picture. And that was okay. Because the work was real, the impact was measurable. And every ignored resume or assumed assistantship added another layer of resolve. Maya called it silent power. "You're changing lives," she told Claire one night. "And they don't even know who to thank. That's the best kind of revolution." Claire chuckled. "They'll know when it matters." The silence wasn't always easy, but it was intentional, strategic. The truth was, Claire had stopped trying to be seen. She had started aiming to be undeniable. And with every silent milestone, she was proving just that. One day, she walked into a boardroom filled with potential investors. A junior associate greeted her without much interest, asking her to prepare the projector for the CEO. Claire did. Then she walked to the front of the room and began the presentation herself. 10 minutes in, the room had shifted. People leaned forward. They took notes. Eyes widened. By the end, an older partner asked, "And what's your official title again?" Claire smiled. "Founder and CEO." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then applause. That night, Claire received a text from her mother. Just one sentence. "I watched your interview. I didn't know." Claire stared at it for a long time. Then she typed back, "Now you do." Dean's engagement dinner was held at a sleek, upscale restaurant nestled in the hills outside the city. Candlelight flickered against glass walls, and servers moved with choreographed precision. Everyone looked their best, the night dressed in congratulations. Claire, as always, was there early. But when she walked in and found her name card tucked far from the main table near the edge, next to a stack of coats, she understood her place. The overflow. The afterthought. She didn't argue. She smiled, placed her gift with the others, and took her seat. The room buzzed with pride for Dean. He had just made senior partner. Toasts flew like confetti. Laughter tumbled over glasses of champagne, and Claire listened, quietly, letting it all wash over her. Then, as dessert arrived, Sophia Dean's fiancé rose to make her toast. It was sweet and loving, full of little stories about their journey. But halfway through, she paused. "I also want to thank someone else here," Sophia said. "Claire. We just realized something pretty amazing." All heads turned. Sophia looked stunned, but in awe. "I'm on the acquisition team at Argus Health Tech. We're finalizing the purchase of a communication platform that's changing patient care across the country. Next link. And just this morning, I found out the CEO behind it is Claire Bennett." The silence was instant and complete. You could hear forks clink against untouched cake. Their father blinked. "Claire? That's you?" Claire nodded slowly. "Yes." Her mother's wineglass trembled in her hand. Dean stared like he was seeing his sister for the first time. "I thought you were still freelancing," their mother said. "I was," Claire replied. "Then I built something." For once, no one spoke. Claire let the quiet grow. "I signed every document with C. Bennett," she added. Because no one cared to ask more. Sophia stepped forward, beaming. "You should have said something sooner." Claire's smile didn't waver. "I wanted the work to speak first." Or, the moment lingered like a drop of honey sweet, surprising, slow to dissolve. Her father adjusted his collar. "You really built it yourself?" Claire turned to him. "With a team. With a dream. With no help from anyone in this room." Dean's mouth opened slightly, as if to apologize again, but no words came. After the dinner ended, Claire stood alone on the patio, overlooking city lights. The air was cool. Her phone buzzed a new email. Argus Health Tech's final offer. $215 million. She didn't gasp, she didn't scream, she just stared at the number, then turned off her phone. Inside, her family mingled in subdued conversation, but the mood had shifted. She saw it in the way people looked at her now, not with pity or confusion, but with a searching kind of respect. Dean came to stand beside her. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, not accusatory, but almost guilty. Claire shrugged. "You never asked." He was quiet, then nodded. "You built all that, that's incredible." "Oh." Claire didn't need his approval. But hearing him say it felt like breathing for the first time in a long while. That night, Claire drove home in silence. Her reflection in the rearview mirror was calm, sure. She thought of the girl who sat at the kids' table for years, whose trophies collected dust, whose name was mispronounced in boardrooms. And then she thought of today. The reveal had come not with trumpets, but with a whisper. And that was enough. They saw her now. But the truth was Claire had always seen herself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only sight that ever truly mattered. As she pulled into her driveway, Claire opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small, worn object. Her first programming trophy, won at age 15. It had sat there for years, too painful to display, too powerful to discard. She brought it inside, dusted it off, and set it gently on her kitchen counter. Tomorrow, she decided, she would finally put it on her office shelf. Not for them. For her. A week after the dinner, Claire received a message from her mother. "Let's have brunch, just us," it said. Curious but guarded, Claire agreed. They met at the old family home, the one where every hallway whispered memories of hierarchy, silence, and second place. The dining room had been set with fresh croissants, orange juice, and the familiar ceramic teapot with tiny blue flowers. Her father sat at the head of the table, as usual. Her mother gestured to the seat beside her. Not the children's seat, not the extra. A seat at the table. Claire sat, her back straight. "We wanted to talk," her mother began, voice trembling slightly. "About what happened. And about you." Her father nodded. "We didn't know, we hadn't realized." Claire looked at them evenly. "You didn't want to know, that's different." Her mother winced. "That's not fair." "No," Claire said, calmly. "It's not, but it's true. There was a long silence. Then her mother reached out. "We always believed in you, Claire." Claire shook her head, gently but firmly. "No, Mom. You believed in a version of me that fit into your world. I didn't need you to believe in me. I just needed you to stop pretending I didn't exist." She reached into her bag and placed something in the center of the table. Her old programming trophy, golden, slightly tarnished, the engraved name still visible. "I won this when I was 15. You didn't come to the award ceremony because Dean had a soccer match. I remember sitting on the curb outside school with this in my lap, waiting for a ride that never came." Her parents looked stricken. Her father's mouth opened, then closed. Claire continued. "I kept this hidden for years. It meant something to me, but every time I looked at it, I heard your silence." She took a breath. "But now I hear my own voice. And it's louder. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were wrong, Claire." Claire nodded, not unkindly. "Yes, and I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make peace with or without your participation." The air shifted. Her father reached for a croissant, almost absently. Her mother stared at the trophy as if seeing it for the first time. "I'll be placing this on my shelf at work," Claire said, standing up. "Not because I want anyone's approval, but because it deserves to be seen." Her mother stood too. "Can we try again?" Claire looked at her for a long moment. "We can start. But I won't shrink to fit your picture of me anymore." Then she walked out, leaving the trophy glinting in the morning light. Outside, the day was bright. Claire stepped into it like someone who had finally stopped waiting for a seat and had started building her own table. That evening, she received an email from her mother. The subject line read, "Your first win." Attached was a scanned photo Claire had never seen before her, holding the programming trophy, standing beside a science fair poster. In the corner of the photo, her teacher had scribbled, "Brilliant. A natural leader." In the body of the email, a single sentence, "I found this in your old drawer. I wish I had looked sooner." Claire stared at the screen, her eyes burning not from pain, but from release. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, she had learned, held more power than endings ever could. A few days later, Claire received a package. Inside was a notebook, her old coding journal from high school. Tucked in the back was a note in her mother's handwriting. "I read some of these pages. I finally understand what you were building." Claire sat on the edge of her bed, journal in hand, a quiet sense of reconciliation settling around her. It was never about being right, it was about being seen. And slowly, that was starting to happen. She placed the journal next to the trophy on her shelf. Both relics of a girl who once had to fight to be noticed. Now, they were anchors of the woman who no longer needed to ask for permission to be proud of herself. The knock on Claire's door came just after sunset. She opened it to find Dean standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Hey," Claire replied, stepping aside. "Come in." They sat in the living room, neither reaching for the untouched tea Claire had made out of habit. The silence stretched until Dean finally spoke. "I saw the article," he said. "The acquisition. The profile on you in Forbes. I had no idea." Claire gave a small smile. "You weren't supposed to." Dean winced. "That's fair." He looked around her apartment, neat, warm, filled with plants and shelves of books and tech gear. A stark contrast to how he'd always imagined her life. Solitary, disorganized, somehow incomplete. "You know," he said slowly, "I used to tell myself that you were just stubborn. That you were trying to prove something. But I think what really bothered me was that you didn't need any of us." Claire tilted her head. "Is that what you thought?" "Yeah." He gave a short laugh. "But it wasn't true. You did need us. We just weren't there. I wasn't there." He rubbed the back of his neck, an old habit from when they were kids, and he got caught sneaking cookies before dinner. "I was jealous," he admitted. "You were brilliant. And you didn't have to try to be someone else to be that way. I did. I followed the path laid out for me, and it still felt like you were 10 steps ahead." Claire looked down at her hands. You hid it well, you made me feel small. Dean's voice cracked. I know. That's what I hate the most. I tried to make you feel unimportant because I couldn't stand how important you actually were. There was a long pause. Why now? Claire asked. Why come here today? Dean took a deep breath. Because, watching you sit at that dinner, knowing no one in the room except Sophia understood who you were, what you'd done, it hit me. We missed it. I missed it. And I don't want to miss anymore. Claire studied him. The boy who used to tease her for staying into code. The teenager who'd never invited her to his birthday parties. The man who'd sat at the head of the table while she poured water and passed plates. You hurt me, she said softly. I know. And I'm not here to ask for instant forgiveness. Just maybe a beginning. Claire nodded slowly. You want to try again? Dean gave a shaky smile. Yeah, I do. She stood and walked to the shelf. From it, she took a photo, one that Sophia had sent after the dinner. It showed Claire, standing at the back of the room, trophy gleaming behind her, expression unreadable. Dean hadn't seen it before. This is the girl you ignored, Claire said, handing it to him. But she never stopped being your sister. Dean took the photo, eyes wet. Thank you for letting me see her now. Claire gave a quiet laugh. You're welcome. But let's be clear, I'm not stepping back into the shadows. I wouldn't ask you to. They stood there, two adults relearning how to be siblings, not through shared pasts, but by committing to shared futures. Later that night, Claire received a text. Dean. Dinner next week? Just us? I'd like to hear about your first line of code. Claire smiled at the screen. She typed. Claire. Only if you bring questions. Real ones. Dean. Deal. It wasn't an apology that fixed everything. But it was the start of something they'd never had before. Honesty. And in that honesty, Claire felt something she hadn't expected: peace. Claire never expected to become a voice for others. But after the article came out and her story gained attention, the messages started to flood in. Not from CEOs or investors, but from young girls, college students, and women in their 30s who had once sat in basements of their own, building dreams in silence. That's when she launched a blog called Notes from the Basement. The name was more than nostalgic, it was defiant. A love letter to the space where her identity took shape, away from the expectations and noise. Her first post read, "This is for the girl coding between family dinners. For the one who dreams in algorithms, who's never been asked what she wants to build. You're not invisible. You're just early." The response was overwhelming. Within a week, thousands of readers subscribed, comments poured in. Girls wrote about being told tech was a man's field. Women shared stories of bosses who assumed they were assistants. The quiet army Claire hadn't known existed was suddenly standing with her. One post, titled "To the Girl with the Trophy No One Noticed," was shared over 30,000 times. In it, Claire detailed the night she brought home her National Programming Award and how it stayed in a drawer for years. "I didn't hide it," she wrote. "I just stopped expecting anyone to care." How? She began to host live chats, Q&A sessions, and mentorship circles. One day, during a stream, a girl from Minnesota asked, "How do I make my parents believe in me?" Claire paused, her gaze softened. "You don't," she said gently. "You teach yourself to believe so hard that their disbelief can't touch you." The chat flooded with clapping emojis. One user typed, "This. Just this." Claire introduced a feature called Letters to her younger self, inviting women to submit notes they would write to the version of themselves who felt lost or dismissed. Submissions came in waves. "Dear me at 15, you don't have to shrink to fit." "Dear 16-year-old me, they don't see you now, but one day, you'll run rooms they can't enter." Claire read every single one. One note came from a high school junior named Brielle who wrote, "My mom says girls shouldn't code. But I built a game last month. It has 400 downloads. I named the main character Claire." Claire printed it and taped it to her desk. She also started traveling, quietly visiting schools, attending STEM panels, mentoring first-generation college students. At one session, a shy girl in the back asked, "What did you do when they told you to stop?" Claire replied, "I kept building. And now they download what I build." Behind the scenes, Claire wrote her own letter. One she had never shared publicly. It read, "Dear Claire, age 15. You were never the echo. You were the voice. You were never behind. You were blazing ahead in silence. I see you now. We made it." She kept that letter in her wallet, folded next to her ID. Years later, when the Foundation for Women in Tech gave her a Lifetime Impact Award, she smiled at the camera and said, "This is not for me. This is for every girl who ever asked, 'Am I enough?' The answer is yes. You always were." Oh, and for the first time, the room stood for Claire not just as a founder or innovator, but as the woman who had written herself into history. Not with noise, but with a light only the brave could see from the basement. Claire had spoken on countless stages by now. Conferences, investor summits, guest lectures, but this one felt different. The National Medical Innovation Conference had requested her presence not just as a speaker, but as an honoree. They were awarding her a medal for transformational contributions to healthcare communication. As she stood behind the curtain, her heart beat slower than usual, not from nerves, but from something deeper. Closure, maybe. Or recognition she hadn't even realized she still craved. She walked on stage to a standing ovation. But her eyes scanned the crowd for one face, not Dean's, not Sophia's, her mother's. And there she was, sitting alone in the back row, her posture smaller than Claire had ever seen. She wasn't clapping, just watching. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. For once, she wasn't trying to appear composed. She was just a woman watching her daughter shine. Claire took the microphone. "When I was 15, she began, I brought home a trophy. No one asked where it came from, so I put it in a drawer. Tonight, I'm putting it where it belongs, in the light." Exprès. The room exploded in applause, but Claire barely heard it. Her gaze was still on her mother. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and posed for photos, Claire walked off stage and headed to the last row. Her mother stood. They faced each other, words caught somewhere between them. Claire didn't offer a speech. She just reached out her hand. And her mother took it. No apology. No retroactive justifications. Just the warmth of skin against skin, the tremble of old hurt meeting present grace. They sat down side by side, saying nothing. Claire opened her clutch and placed something on the table beside them. The old trophy, slightly scuffed but gleaming. Her mother looked at it, then at Claire. And for the first time, no skepticism, no dismissal. Just pride. Quiet, fragile, real. A reporter approached, camera ready. Claire gently shook her head. "Not this moment. Not this time." She leaned over to her mother and whispered, "You don't have to say anything, I know." Tears rolled down her mother's cheek as she nodded. Claire turned to look around the room again. Colleagues clinking glasses, students taking notes. Lives shifting because of something she once built in silence. And now, all that silence had shaped something loud enough to echo. That night, Claire didn't post a picture. She didn't share a quote. She went home, placed the trophy back on her desk next to Brielle's letter, and lit a candle. Not in memory. In arrival. She turned off her phone, made a cup of tea, and stared out the window where the moonlight touched the edge of the rooftop garden she had started. A quiet, growing space like her. Built from neglect, blooming in defiance. Full circle wasn't about going back, it was about finally feeling whole. Later that week, Claire received a package in the mail. It was from her mother. Inside was a photo from years ago Claire had never seen. It was from that forgotten science fair, the one where she'd won third place for a prototype app. In the picture, Claire was smiling next to her project. Behind her, just barely visible in the crowd, was her mother. Watching. Not clapping. Just present. The note inside said, "I was always proud, I just didn't know how to show it." Claire read it twice, then placed it in the drawer beside her candle. Not for closure. For continuation. She walked to the garden, now in full bloom. The lavender was thriving. The mint leaves brushed her fingertips. She sat on the bench she had built herself without help, without recognition. And yet, it had always held her weight. That night, as the city hummed beneath her, she wrote a letter. Not for publication. For her mother. Mom, I spent so many years waiting to be seen. But maybe you were seeing me all along, in the only way you knew how. I've stopped needing the spotlight, but I'll always remember this quiet moment where love finally spoke, not with words, but with presence. She folded it, tucked it under the old science fair photo, and whispered one last time. We're okay. Claire stood by the window of her apartment, the morning sun spilling onto the wooden floorboards. Her fingers traced the edge of an envelope inside it, a letter she had written to herself at 15. She unfolded it slowly, her own words staring back at her. We did it. Not because they saw you, but because you did. The words didn't make her cry. They made her breathe easier, like they had been waiting to exhale with her all this time. She had made the decision weeks ago. It was time to step back. Not because she was tired, but because she had arrived. After years of proving, building, breaking, rebuilding, she no longer needed to stand at the helm to feel whole. She called Maya first. Her partner, her sister in grit. Maya's voice broke when Claire told her she was stepping down from daily operations to become a full-time mentor. To who? Maya asked. To every girl coding in her basement right now, Claire said. To every version of us. Nextlink's board was stunned, but supportive. Investors offered tributes. Staff sent messages. But Claire declined the press interviews. Her final company-wide message was simple. I was once a girl who thought success meant being seen. Now I know success is seeing yourself. I'm not walking away. I'm opening more doors. Starting with mine. She spent her first day of semi-retirement in her rooftop garden, pruning the lavender. That night, she launched a new mentorship program, Windows in the Wall, specifically designed for teenage girls from underrepresented backgrounds who wanted to break into tech. The first week, 3,400 applications came in. On a shelf above her desk, Claire placed the old trophy, the letter from her mother, and a new one she'd just framed, the original code she wrote for the first version of Nextlink. As she stared at it, the doorbell rang. A delivery. Inside the box, a handmade wooden plaque engraved with a quote she had once shared in a podcast. They didn't believe in me. But they weren't the ones I needed. It was unsigned. But she had a feeling it came from one of her mentees. She smiled and whispered, Good. She sees herself, too. Later that night, Claire lit the candle again, not for memory, not even for celebration. Just to remind herself, this is what light built on darkness looks like. This is what becoming feels like. She wrote in her journal before bed. We don't always need a spotlight, we just need to stop hiding from our own glow. She closed it, turned off the lights, and stood for a moment in the hush of the room.